Hi everyone, welcome to the Self-Assessment Crowcast for the Inter-American region. It's my pleasure to have all you in this first Crowcast in this year. And the topic today is very interesting for many NSOs in the region, is GSAT. And today we have a special invited, is Linda Raybon. Linda is our leader in the Global Support Center for the Capacity Strengthening. So Linda will support us today in this presentation. And welcome, Linda, and thank you for your support today.
Thank you, Janet, for the introduction. I'm very happy to join all of you today for this crowdcast, so thank you for joining. Before we get started, I would just like to explain to you a little bit about crowdcast. Crowdcast, as a participant, you're unable to speak with us, but we strongly encourage you to ask questions. And at the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says Ask a Question. From there, you can input your questions, and when we get to the end of the presentation, we'll take some time to answer those questions, and you can indicate to us in the chat channel as well if your question's been answered fully, or if you need any technical support. We have Susanna with us as well, providing some background support for us. Thank you, Susanna. So now we will get started into our presentation. So I'm here to talk with you about WOSM's capacity strengthening approach for National Scout organizations. And this links in with what Janet mentioned about GSAT. So let me explain how all this fits together. So what is WOSM's capacity strengthening approach? This ties in with Vision 2023 and how we're enabling 100 million young people to be active citizens, creating positive change in their communities and around the world. To reach this Vision 2023, we want to be growing our membership, obviously, and making sure that our NSOs have the capacity to support this membership growth. So to achieve the membership growth within your NSO, it's not only important to have quality scouting, a quality experience for the youth to enjoy. We'll bring them back again and again to our program. But it's also about having a strong organizational foundation that can support that program. So building capacity in NSOs around the world is done through the various support mechanisms that we have, which I'll explain in a moment. It's also done through building partnerships and connecting NSOs with other NSOs around the world to share best practices and how we can improve the scouting experience. It also comes into aligning and innovating our work against other international best practices within our industry of the youth movement as well. So part of this capacity strengthening approach is our capacity strengthening cycle that we have. This cycle has 4 steps, which I'll walk you through to explain. The first step of the capacity strengthening cycle is assessing. Before we can build the capacity of an NSO, it's super helpful to assess your current capacity. This assessing is generally done through GSAT. It's WOSM's quality standard, and it's used to assess the strengths and areas of improvement of your organization. The next step is prioritizing. So once you know your strengths and areas for improvement, you can then decide on an action plan on how you can build the capacity of your NSO. We have an action plan template, and an action plan can be created to ensure that you have buy-in in your organization, and that you set priorities for the next steps moving forward. This action plan is also really well connected and should be included within your strategic plan as well for the big items that you may need to address. And that can help ensure that the work continues moving forward. The next step is obviously supporting. So once you have your action plans in place, we want to assist NSOs to identify the support that they need and receive that support. This support is delivered through what we call the WOSM Services, and that helps you if you've identified through your action plan, for example, that you need to improve your youth program. You can request support through the WOSM Service for Youth Program, and experts and consultants on that topic can help you in building the capacity around that area of work. The final step of the capacity strengthening cycle is monitoring. Monitoring and evaluation is always very important to our work. We need to understand where we've come from the assessment, where we're going, and the work that we've done. We also want to make sure that we tell the story with others. So if you've done an assessment, it's important to share that experience with other NSOs so everyone can be motivated and encouraged to go through this process. This monitoring step is managed through our WOSM service platform, where your service requests are captured within the platform, and where we can see the progress that you're making. Another way of monitoring your progress is to then go through another GSAT assessment, maybe a year or to 3 years later, to see how your results have improved. And that's when we start the cycle all over again. So that's an overview of the capacity strengthening cycle. And now I'll take a focus through this presentation on specifically GSAT, the assessing step of this cycle. So as you all know, our Vision 2023 is broken into different trienniums. We're currently in the triennium 2017-2020 on the world level. And part of this triennium, we have a goal, a KPI, that by 2020, 75% of all the NSOs around the world will complete a GSAT assessment. And this helps us to ensure that further development and support is provided for NSOs through doing an assessment. And that we ensure we follow up with you on those results as well. So what is World Scouting's Quality Standard, or GSAT? So this standard is based on good governance and quality scouting principles. So not only does it bring international best practices from externally, like the international organizational standard items, but it also brings best practices that we've built within Scouting as well. This tool was built in development in cooperation with SGS, which is the world's leading auditing an firm based in Europe, and it's given us a great opportunity to show that this tool has a great outcome and experience for everyone. This tool was also tailored for WOSM. We didn't want to just use the international organizational standard that is out there for national NGOs, but we wanted it to be specific to scouting, to have the right language that you would understand, and to make sure that we also focus on our scouting program. The objectives of GSAT is first to benchmark that we have a measurement of quality. It's one tool across all the regions that can give NSOs an opportunity to measure themselves against these global standards. The next objective is around assessment. It's a tool for improvement. So GSAT offers NSOs the ability to evaluate their own operations and identify their strengths and areas for improvement. Next, we have objective around addressing priorities. So as I explained, out of a GSAT, we want you to take action together to ensure successful and efficient follow-up of the assessment. Allows World Scouting to address our priorities, not only of you as the NSO that you've identified, but also for our movement as a whole. The next objective is capacity strengthening, making sure that we're growing our movement. So GSAT enables World Scouting to improve its support to NSOs, and based off of the trends identified through GSAT, and it helps enhance the capabilities of our movement to reach more and more young people. The final and most important objective of GSAT is it allows for continuous improvement. We are committed to excellence, so GSAT encourages ongoing development of our movement and bringing purposeful change for our organizations. So the GSAT standard is based around 10 dimensions, and these dimensions cover topics from organizational aspects, our institutional requirements, governance framework, integrity management, and it also goes into topics that are more specific to scouting. For example, adults in scouting, which covers both volunteers and if you have professional staff. And it also covers items like our youth program, which is our core work that we do. Those 10 dimensions are broken into 96 different GSAT criteria. And these GSAT criteria, I've shown an example on the screen here. I'll just read it out loud. The NSOs have a clear training and personal development framework for adults, both professional staff and volunteers. Each training curriculum has clear objectives, the minimum competencies required, and is regularly reviewed. So you can see in this criteria how it builds upon itself. Sort of starts with having a framework and having objectives, and then making sure that it's regularly reviewed. Okay, so all of the criteria are sort of set up in this same style. So now that we have the criteria, each of those criteria are scored between 0 to 3. And I'll explain the scoring with you a little bit later. To be able to score for GSAT is very much evidence-based. So do you have a policy? Do you have a procedure? Do you have training records, for example? And are you able to show that evidence? It could also be photos of events for some criteria as well. Within the 96 criteria that I mentioned, there are 15 major nonconformities. These 15 major nonconformities are red flags. There are 15 criteria that we feel are the most important aspects for a strong organization. And if you don't have these 15, these would be your top priority to follow up on and help to build the capacity of your NSO. Following the 15 red flags or major nonconformities, we've identified 5 key dimensions out of the 10. And those 5 key dimensions are governance framework, strategic framework, adults in scouting, resource allocation and financial controls, and finally, youth program. These 5 key dimensions also help when you're building your action plan after. If you have any low scored criteria in those 5 key dimensions, those would also be top priority to follow up on after you've addressed the 15 red major nonconformities, red flags. So there are 3 methods that we offer GSAT in. The first I'll explain is the GSAT Self-Assessment. So NSOs conduct this assessment themselves. They do their own evaluation and go through the scoring. Preparation for this, we deem usually takes about 1 month, but it's very flexible and it depends on your situation. The self-assessment can be done online, virtually, or it can be done in person with your team. It can also be done over 1 weekend, like 2 days, or you might have several meetings to cover the different dimensions, and that could take you a couple months to complete. Then next, the support that we have available for this, you could request support from a GSAT facilitator, one of our trained GSAT consultants. And this support is generally provided virtually, but there can also be requests for in-person support as well. The other method of GSAT assessment is through what we call the WOSM assessment. And this is a second-party assessment. So we have trained WOSM assessors within each region that is trained based off of our scoring guidelines and being internal auditors to go in and assess your NSO and provide a slightly external perspective. They're still scouting members, but they come from outside of your NSO. Preparation time at the very minimum for this is 2 weeks, but generally takes a bit longer to gather all the evidence needed. And these are conducted in person. So the GSAT facilitator would generally arrive 1 day before to help make sure everything's prepared. Then the assessment takes 2 days, followed by a day to start working on your action plan. And you can get support from that GSAT facilitator either virtually or in person as well. The other method of GSAT assessment is what we call a GSAT audit. This is where our external auditors from SGS come in and do an assessment, and it follows the very same approach as a WOSM assessment. And this provides a fully external point of view for your NSO. There are sort of three approaches to going through these assessments. One is a stepping stone approach. So maybe you start with a GSAT self-assessment, get to know the tool, and you build yourself up to a GSAT audit. Another method is maybe it's through regional guided approach. So maybe the region has a strategy that they're working with you on, and they deem that your NSO has the capacity to go right into a WOSM assessment or GSAT audit, and they might suggest an approach that you follow to go through a GSAT assessment. Another approach is obviously if we have some donors. Maybe the NSO is interested due to potential donors that you have or that we have through WOSM, that you are asked to go through some quality assessment. So this could drive which assessment method that you choose to go through. For this presentation with you today, I'll focus on the GSAT self-assessment. So the self-assessment is a very accessible tool, and it's great to help you in the first stages when you are developing a strategic plan. It could help you guide the work that you will do with that plan. Or it could be just simply a great way to identify your strengths and areas of improvement and how you will work with WOSM to strengthen your capacity, identify some of the WOSM services that you might like to request. Another reason for doing a GSAT self-assessment is if you have done a previous GSAT assessment, it can help you monitor your progress, as I explained. So you can go back and do a quick self-assessment to understand where things have progressed and where you still have work to do. So the first step, obviously NSOs are strongly encouraged to do GSAT self-assessments at any point in time. And if you like, you can request the GSAT service to get support in doing this assessment. So you can go on to the WOSM service platform at services.scout.org, and you can request support through the GSAT self-assessment area of support and request a service. So we have a selection of GSAT consultants that are trained around the world to support national organizations in conducting or undergoing an assessment. So they can be assigned to support you, as I mentioned, either in person or virtually, depending on the capacity and work plans within the region and budget availability, if that person may be sent in person to you or not. NSOs can also, they're very strongly encouraged if you do a GSAT assessment on your own, a self-assessment on your own, to share the results of your assessment with the region. So letting the region know that you're doing a self-assessment, they can help provide you the support you need, the resources, and then at the end making sure that we receive those results so we can better support you moving forward in building that capacity and understand where your NSO is at. And I like to clarify that those results of GSAT are kept confidential for the NSO, and they're only shared with specific staff or assigned consultants that are there to support your NSO in your capacity strengthening process. So we have a resource called the GSAT Self-Assessment Guidelines, which are available in all of our WOSM languages. So we have it also in Spanish, as well as English, French, Arabic, and Russian. And these guidelines walk you through the process of how to do a GSAT self-assessment with your NSO. So in summary, there are 4 recommended steps to follow. It's important to start off the process with a meeting with your national leadership to present about GSAT, the importance of it, maybe a similar presentation that I'm doing now, and to build a plan with the leadership on how you will go through doing a GSAT self-assessment. A part of this is to also assign work to different members of your team to start preparing for the GSAT assessment. So at some point then in step 2, you will have a follow-up meeting to see how your preparations are going. Are the teams gathering all the evidence that they need? Does anyone have any questions? And this part of the preparation is a great opportunity to reach out to the region for that virtual support dimension from the GSAT consultants, because they can help answer questions you have on specific criteria. They can help you understand the scoring method. They can help you understand better the evidence that you should be gathering as well. Then the most important step is step 3, and this is carrying out the assessment. So as I mentioned, this can be done in a variety of ways. Maybe you bring the team together for one weekend and you do the assessment all together over a couple of days. Another option is you assign a dimension of GSAT to, say, the youth program dimension to the youth program team, and they do their assessment for that dimension. And then you bring all of the different results back together. And this process could take a little bit longer, but it allows a flexible approach to what works best for your NSO. Then lastly, it's great to schedule a meeting to review the results of your GSAT assessment and set your action plan and follow-up needs. And maybe even at that time, request a follow-up service from WOSM. It's highly important to engage your national board in this process, that they can take these results and actions on a strategic level. But it's also important to engage your leadership teams, youth program committees, and different things, so you get the full perspective of the operational work that is happening within your organization. So I mentioned there's a scoring process. Each criteria is scored from 0 to 3. So here you can see what this scoring method looks like. When you get to a WOSM assessment or a GSAT audit, our trained consultants have a very detailed scoring guideline. So we make sure that the scoring we give is across the board the same. But we provide a basic scoring method that follows our approach to help you do a GSAT self-assessment. So scores 0 and 1 are definitely in need of improvement. So score 0 has a status of non-compliant. you don't have any evidence exists in your NSO around that criteria. Score 1 is that you have some of the items that the criteria listed, you have some evidence to show some work in that area, but it's definitely not all achieved, and there's more work to be done. Number 2 is number 2 and 3 scores. They are positive. They are showing that you have good work in this area. 2 is that you have most items, that those items are up to date and they're implemented. Score number 3 is absolutely full compliance to that criteria. And this builds on the aspect of regular evaluation and continuous improvement, that you are continually refreshing your policy or making sure that you review it, and that work is looking on a continuous improvement phase. And then there are a few criteria that might not be applicable to your NSO. So a good example of this is we have a criteria that states that your NSO is actively engaged with the National Youth Council of your country. If your country doesn't have a National Youth Council, then this criteria would be not applicable. Also, there are some criteria that build off of another criteria. So if you don't have one criteria, then that would mean or if you have little evidence for one criteria, that would maybe mean that the next criteria on that topic might not be applicable for you. So that's how the basic scoring method works. And you would go through and score each of the 96 criteria against this method. I've shown here an example of the scoring. So I've taken criteria 203, the NSO's National Board and General Assembly take decisions by a simple majority of votes cast, except for changes to the Constitution and dissolution, which require a qualified majority. So here, if your NSO doesn't have any rule for this, it would be a 0. If you do have a rule to take decision by simple majority, but your constitution and the dissolution of your organization are not mentioned, then you only have a few, like part of that criteria covered, so it's a 1. If there's a rule to take decisions by simple majority for all decisions, including changes to your constitution and dissolution of your organization, so that has like pretty much all the criteria covered, it would be a 2. And if it has the entire criteria recovered and you look back at this and maybe reconsider it or review your constitution on a periodic basis, then you would give yourself a 3 because you're looking at the evaluation and continuous improvement part. Okay, so that's how the process works for doing a GSAT self-assessment and doing the scoring yourself. You want to make sure that you show as much evidence as possible, and to help you with this, we have a variety of resources available on our GSAT service webpage at services.scout.org/service/9. And on there, there's a presentation that gives some examples of evidence by dimension. There is the GSAT Self-Assessment Guidelines. There's also a scoring template that lists out all the 96 criteria and allows an opportunity for you to list your results, your score, and your comments or any actions that you want to take. And we also have a way on the platform that you can upload your results as well. And as I mentioned, those results are kept confidential. To help you in sharing your about GSAT with your board or with other members of your national leadership, there's also a presentation on GSAT which you can use. And this is also where you can request the direct support from the region as well. So now I will go into if you have any questions, and I also have Janet online from the region as well that can also help with any regional specific questions. So I will just have a look. I don't see any questions listed at the moment, but if you have any questions, please put them in the question field or also in the chat box, and I would be more than happy to address those questions. In the meantime, while we're waiting for anyone to ask their questions, I just want to ask Janet if she has anything more that she would like to add from the perspective of the support available from the Inter-America region. Janet?
Yes, Linda, thank you for your presentation. I don't know if we have any additional question from any participants. Okay, we have one.
There's one question. Do you need to share results of the assessment with someone? So after you do an assessment, it's important that the results are shared back with your board, your national leadership within your NSO, to make sure that they understand the outcome of your assessment and that you can create that action plan together for improvement. Additionally, we very much ask that those results are shared at the regional level. So that could be reaching out to Janet, for example. She's responsible for GSAT and capacity strengthening in the region. Or really anyone at the regional office it can be shared with. And we'll make sure those results are kept confidential and they're there to understand the capacity of your NSO and how we can best support you. Is that correct, Janet? Is there anything more you'd like to add to that question?
No, it's correct. The results is very confidential, and I think that one thing very important is that the objective of the self-assessment is to measure the capacity of the NSO, and the results finally is important only for the NSO.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any more questions?
Gabriel say, through scouting, we can change the mode of thinking. I think this is a comment. No, it's
Yes.
a question. Yes. But I think that this tool, this GSAT, is one way for understand better the NSOs and understand and identify the needs that the NSO have. So this presentation, this broadcast, is valuable for all the people that is not connected today in all the regions. I think this explanation will to help many people and many NSOs for clarify the tool and the questions about the GSAT process.
Yes, for sure. And I think it's also important to mention that GSAT, even if you're a stronger organization, I think going through a GSAT assessment can really also open your eyes to other perspectives. Um, and for any organization, really, it provides a new perspective, new things to look at, things that you might not have thought about before. So I think it's really important from that perspective as well.
Yes. So now the ball is in the NSOs. So we have the service platform. If you need your NSO need some support for the self-assessment, you have the options of to use the guideline for the self-assessment tool, and you have the option request a service through the service platform, or ask me in the Inter-American region, or to Linda in the Global Support Center for resolve any additional question that you have when you see this video.
Yep. Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to have joined you to share with you about GSAT. And I look forward to more and more NSOs getting engaged in this process. And yes, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Janet or I, and we would be more than happy to assist.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Linda, for your support with this broadcast. And I think that this is very helpful for the NSOs in Inter-American region.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.